paradrama tales.
My dad and stepmom changed my locks to steal my house for my pregnant stepsister. But when I fought back, they finally faced the consequences of their betrayal. I'm 28. This was my sanctuary, and I refused to let entitlement erase my mother's legacy. My mother built that little 3-bedroom house with her own 2 hands, laying every brick as if she were sealing her love into its foundation. And when she passed, she left me more than just keys. She left a promise of stability I'd never known, growing up without a father. I still remember the first time she took me by the hand and pushed open that front door, the paint barely dry, and said, "This is ours forever." It wasn't grand or gilded, just sturdy floors that didn't creak, windows that caught the morning light, and a yard big enough for my summer firework experiments and my mother's roses. In that house, I learned what safety felt like, the warmth of morning coffee brewing downstairs before school, the way the hallway lights glowed when I stumbled home from my late-night shift, the echo of my mother's laughter drifting through the rooms when she played country music on the radio. She wasn't perfect. She burned the occasional roast she worried when I wouldn't answer my phone, but she was rock solid, the kind of parent you knew would show up for every little league game and every broken heart confession. After her funeral, I found her neatly typed will tucked into her desk drawer, explicitly leaving the home to me. No conditions, no strings, just her wish that I have a place to plant roots to build a life she never fully saw me live. In the years since I've honored that gift by making it home, I painted the guest room pale blue for my college friends, I strung twinkling lights along the fence for backyard barbecues, and I even planted a small vegetable patch behind the shed. It was mine, a sanctuary where silence wasn't an absence, but a refuge where I could close the door on old wounds and rest in the knowledge that this roof was my mother's last act of love. When I lost track of myself after her death, this house reminded me who I was, her son worthy of care, deserving of peace. Even on the days when I felt isolated in my grief, I could walk through those rooms and feel her presence as real as if she'd left the kitchen light on. That legacy was my anchor, and I never imagined anyone, especially not my own blood, would try to rip it away. My dad's second marriage turned our family into an entitlement triangle. My father's new wife at the apex, their daughter Savannah, always at her side, and me, my mother's boy, on the outside, watching in disbelief as they turned my childhood home into a revolving door for her demands. From the moment she arrived, Savannah waltzed through life with a must-have list designer handbags for her birthday, spontaneous weekend getaways at Lake Tahoe, even a custom stroller the moment she announced her pregnancy. Dad and my stepmom bent over backward to make each wish come true, as if buying her happiness absolved them of any deeper responsibility. Every time Savannah hinted she wanted something new, nursery furniture, a state-of-the-art baby monitor, a live-in nanny, the answer was always yes, paid for with the credit lines they opened just for her convenience. Meanwhile, I'd keep my distance focusing on work, and weekends spent tinkering in the garage or listening to my mother's old vinyl records in the living room, because I'd learned early that any push for attention would be drowned out by the chorus of "Savannah needs" and "Savannah deserves." It wasn't just the gifts, it was the message woven between their words. Because she was pregnant, because she was their princess, her needs trumped everyone else's. In their eyes, an unmarried childless son wasn't really using the space or the legacy, whereas Savannah's baby merited every square foot of our home, regardless of whose name was on the title. I listened as Dad told her, "You'll always have a room here," and as my stepmom cooed about creating family memories in my mother's dining room. What they saw as generosity felt more like erasure, my mother's decor replaced with pastel nursery blankets, my personal mementos shuffled into boxes in the attic. The entitlement triangle tightened its grip when Savannah needed space for the baby, and they engineered that family meeting, staged small talk, rehearsed concern, so I'd walk out assuming they were reasonable. But entitlement isn't reasonable. It's an attitude that thrives on concession. I realized then that while they built their kingdom of favors around Savannah, they saw me only as the one who'd eventually have to surrender, to vacate, to downsize, to hand over keys without question. That revelation stung harder than any demand, the idea that my mother's gift was nothing more than a tool for their convenience. And in that moment, I understood why distance had been my survival tactic. Only by keeping my heart and doors closed could I honor the legacy Mom entrusted me with, and refuse to let entitlement rewrite her story. I remember pulling into their driveway that afternoon, heart already pounding as if I knew what was coming, and stepping through the front door into the practiced calm of Dad's kitchen. Dad pretending to fret over my job, Stepmom nodding at the stove, and Savannah cradling her belly like it was a shield. They made polite chit-chat. "How's work? Are you eating enough?" But every syllable felt like a countdown. Then Dad cleared his throat and said, "You know, Savannah's house is getting cramped with the baby coming." Stepmom leaned forward with her sweetest voice. "Honey, since you're living alone in that big house, it makes sense for her to move in, and you could find something smaller, right?" It wasn't a question. It was an unspoken ultimatum. They had already searched for apartments for me. The brochures lay in a neat stack on the table, as if research alone justified stripping me of my mother's legacy. My mouth went dry as I stared at Savannah's smug smile. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence spoke volumes. This was her heirloom now. I tried to protest to remind them that my mom left that house to me, but their eyes glazed over the moment I mentioned her name. "Family helps family," Stepmom said, voice honeyed. "You don't really need all that space," Dad chimed in, as if my stability and memories were just empty square footage waiting to be repurposed. My chest tightened. How could they reduce my mother's gift to a makeshift nursery? When I pointed out the apartments they'd found, they waved the suggestion away as if I were stubborn for wanting to compromise. The air buzzed with their entitlement, and I realized the true demand wasn't a favor, but an expectation to agree or be deemed selfish, ungrateful, even cruel. I looked at Savannah, at Dad, at Stepmom, and felt every ounce of the sanctuary that home had been cracked like a whiplash in my chest. I refused to let them manufacture consent through rehearsed concern. "This house is my home," I said, voice steady, despite the whirlpool of anger inside. "It's not up for grabs." Their faces fell into practiced offense, hurt confusion, righteous indignation, because they believed entitlement was the same as right. And in that charged silence, I knew the unspoken ultimatum, bend or break. I chose to stand firm. Every morning, I found a new passive-aggressive landmine waiting for me, a text from my stepmom, quoting articles about the selfless support. Every expectant mother deserves a realtor's business card tucked under my doormat, with a note reading, "Thought you might reconsider," and once a box of pastel-colored baby blankets and booties set on my porch, as if I'd volunteered to be Savannah's live-in maternity storage. Each gesture came cloaked in concern. "We just want to help. Think of the baby. We're only trying to ease your burden." But I knew it for what it was, a steady psychological siege. They'd discovered that guilt is far more effective than brute force, and they deployed tiny barbs until I felt bad for clinging to the home my mother entrusted to me. At first I tried to respond kindly, sending gentle refusals. "Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm comfortable here." But each polite no only emboldened them. My dad began dropping by, unannounced, with boxes of nursery items to store temporarily. And I'd catch my stepmom texting friends about how he just doesn't get it. Poor Savannah. It became clear that no amount of tact would satisfy their appetite. So I sharpened my boundaries. I told the realtor I'd spoken to that their services were unnecessary. I refused the boxes outright, returning them on their driveway. And I began to reply to every text with a single sentence: "This home is not negotiable." The effect was instantaneous. The courtesy veneer cracked, revealing entitlement's brittle core. When my dad showed up, clutching another brochure, I stood in the doorway and calmly said, "I asked you not to bring this here again." He tried to argue that I was making things difficult, but I held firm: no more invitations, no more justifications. The more they pushed, the more transparent their motives became. It wasn't about helping a pregnant daughter. It was about seizing a resource they believed was theirs by right. With each unwanted gift and each thinly veiled text, they confirmed what I'd suspected: this was never about family support, but about entitlement weaponized against me. In that crucible of passive-aggressive skirmishes, I discovered that real power lies not in fighting fire with fire, but in unwavering refusal. And by drawing a clear line, no donations, no drop-by visits, no games, they finally realized that my mother's legacy wasn't theirs to redistribute. That evening, I came home after a long day at work, looking forward to the quiet comfort of my sanctuary, only to find the key wouldn't turn in the lock. My heart flipped in my chest as I jiggled it again, imagining I'd simply grabbed the wrong key, and then I saw the paper taped to my front door. "We've changed the locks for safety. Please contact us to discuss this. Signed in, cursive by my dad. Rage and disbelief slammed into me like a freight train. My own father and stepmom had effectively locked me out of my mother's house, the last place I felt truly at peace, and stapled it off with a note dripping in false concern. I sank to my knees on the welcome mat, hands shaking as the reality hit. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a calculated move to rewrite the rules of my life without my consent. I phoned Dad immediately, voice trembling. "What the hell is going on? You've changed the locks on my home," he answered too casually. "Think of it as a temporary safety measure to protect Savannah and the baby." His half-hearted excuse was a slap in the face. My safety and my rights didn't even register on his radar. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You've trespassed, manipulated, and now you've stolen my home. I want those locks changed back today, or I'm calling the police." A tense silence followed, and when he stammered that I was overreacting, I hung up. There was no going back. I dialed 911 reporting trespassing and home invasion by family members. As I waited for the officers to arrive, I replayed every guilt trip text, every unsolicited baby box delivery, and realized this was the culmination of months of manipulation, an audacious declaration of war on my boundaries. The police arrived, spoke firmly with Dad and stepmom at my front door, and insisted they restore my locks and never return without my invitation. Watching them leave under official warning felt like reclaiming more than just a front door. It was reclaiming my mother's legacy and my self-respect. That lockout was the final straw the moment I understood that they would stop at nothing to break me down. So I broke back, enforcing the only line that mattered: my home is mine, and no amount of entitlement or familial pressure will take it from me. I realized I was dealing with more than entitlement the night I sat down with my lawyer and heard the words I never thought I'd hear. "Your dad actually inquired about contesting your mom's will." My skin prickled as he explained the truth behind closed doors months ago, while I was politely shutting down pleas to hand over my home. Dad had quietly consulted an estate attorney to see if he could carve out a legal claim, arguing that his second marriage and Savannah's impending baby turned the house into family property rather than a sole inheritance. I felt a flash of betrayal. Every family meeting and baby blanket drop-off suddenly clicked into place as part of a premeditated strategy. My lawyer leafed through the will mom's carefully typed instructions that the house and land were left exclusively to me, and then sketched out where my dad had tried to find loopholes, claims of joint contributions to property taxes, vague promises of shared upkeep, and the idea that Savannah's needs suddenly trumped my sole right of ownership. But my mom had been meticulous: no ambiguous language, no conditions, nothing allowing anyone but me to claim title. As he spoke, I pulled out my phone and loaded every voicemail where Dad pressured me, every text where stepmom quoted motherhood manifestos, every email suggesting apartments for me, digital breadcrumbs, making their entire scheme glaringly clear. My lawyer nodded, saying this wasn't just forgivable family drama, it was evidence of deliberate manipulation. "We'll file a declaration of heirship, record the will in the county recorder's office, and place a restrictive covenant on the title," he said, laying out the steps to fortify my legal fortress. He also recommended adding my parents to a notice registry, so any future filings against the property would automatically alert me. As I listened, anger coiled into resolve. They hadn't just tried to guilt me into surrendering my sanctuary, they had plotted to steal it. I left that office with a folder bulging with paperwork copies of Mom's will logs of every unwanted drop-off and phone call, notarized affidavits from neighbors who'd witnessed the realtor visits, and a clear plan to shut down every avenue of attack. Back at home, I updated my security system and recorded the new deed restrictions, feeling my mother's protective presence in every step. I knew they'd try to regroup, but now their legal dark arts were laid bare, powerless against the fortress of truth I'd built. Mom entrusted me with that house. No amount of scheming could ever change her final word. I knew I had to stop reacting and start acting, so I claimed my independence in a way they couldn't ignore. First, I confronted Dad and stepmom at their own kitchen table this time, unannounced and unarmed by their rehearsed scripts. I looked Dad in the eye and said, "I know you tried to contest Mom's will, and I have every email, every text, every unwanted pregnancy prop you dropped on my porch." The shock on his face told me I'd stripped away their carefully constructed deniability. Next, I fortified my fortress. I hired a locksmith to rekey every lock, then installed high-definition cameras at every entrance and a video doorbell so I could see every visitor on my phone. I sealed the title with a restrictive covenant, recorded Mom's will at the county recorder's office, and placed an alert on any attempted filings against the property. My lawyer helped set up a notice registry, so any legal motions automatically pinged my inbox, and Dad's inquiries would never stay under the radar again. Finally, I watched entitlement crumble under its own weight. When Dad tried another family intervention, I simply pressed play on the security footage showing him carrying baby clothes into my living room, and the room fell silent. His bravado evaporated, and even Stepmom's sugar-coated reproaches soured into awkward coughs. Friends rallied around me offering meals and moral support, but that castle wall I'd built was mine alone. No more passive-aggressive texts, no more droppings at my doorstep, no more would I be guilt-tripped into helping Savannah. Instead of negotiating, I negotiated only with myself. Would I let their manipulation define my boundaries? And I chose freedom. My mother's legacy was never up for reinterpretation. The house remained my mother's promise kept, and my own victory won. Every evening as I walk through the rooms she once painted and now light with family photos, I feel that promise alive, and the knowledge that independence isn't just about solitude, but about standing unshaken when those who should support you try to steal your very foundation. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life on my own terms, starting with small rituals that reminded me this was my home and my peace to protect. First, I invited a handful of close friends over for a simple victory barbecue burgers on the grill, cold lemonade in mason jars, and a playlist of Mom's favorite oldies humming through the speakers. No huge banners, no awkward toasts, just laughter echoing down the hallways she used to warm with her singing. I watched as they settled into my living room, sinking into the couch cushions I'd recovered from my childhood bedroom, and I felt for the first time in months a sense of genuine belonging rather than obligation. Next, I tackled the attic where I'd shoved family heirlooms during the lock-changing chaos, my mother's sewing machine, my childhood trophies, the photo albums whose pages held every birthday and graduation she'd celebrated with me. I unpacked them slowly, dusting off each frame and rearranging the shelves with intention, so that every object told a story of resilience rather than loss. In the guest room, I hung wind chimes on the window latch and softened the walls with pale gray paint. No nursery furniture in sight, so that visitors would feel welcome in my mother's home, rather than like interlopers. I learned to say no, gracefully too, when an acquaintance tried to commiserate with family. Is everything, isn't it? I nodded politely and steered the conversation back to summer plans, refusing to be drawn into discussions about entitlement or debt. At night, I practiced reclaiming my calm. I lit a lavender candle in the hallway and drank tea on my back porch, watching the neighborhood lights blink on, one by one, each flicker a reminder that I was safe here. I even started journaling about gratitude. 3 things I was thankful for each morning, which shifted my focus from what I'd lost to what I'd won: a house fully, mine a circle of true friends, and a mother's legacy, honored rather than hijacked. Slowly, the shadows of those who'd tried to steal my home receded, replaced by confidence in my right to live unashamedly and unafraid. By the time autumn's first leaves drifted onto the lawn, I realized I'd not just survived their assault on my boundaries, but had transformed this house into a living testament to autonomy and love, the very foundation my mother had intended for me all along. Standing my ground cost me sleepless nights and tested my faith in family, but today I sleep easy knowing no one can ever erode the promise my mother built into these walls, and that victory tastes sweeter when earned on your own terms. If you've ever faced guilt trips, ultimatums, or loved ones who mistake entitlement for love, remember true family uplifts. Your boundaries never bulldozes them. Subscribe for more stories of ordinary people drawing unbeaten lines in the sand, and share this video to remind someone out there that standing firm is not selfish. It's self-respect. Visit our website to download the free home and heart protection kit packed with conversation, scripts, legal checklists, and community resources so you can safeguard what matters most. Leave a comment below if you've ever had to defend your peace, and join our Facebook support group where hundreds of us swap advice, strength, and solidarity when it feels like the whole world expects you to cave. In reclaiming my mother's legacy, I learned that boundaries are an act of love for yourself, And that's a lesson worth passing on. You don't owe anyone your security or your sanity. You owe yourself the freedom to live unashamed. Let's keep building each other up, one unbreakable boundary at a time.